virtual meeting, and because of that, the prayer and pledge of allegiance are being waived. Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Forbes. Councilmember Bench.
Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Yeah.
Mayor
Madam Clerk, if you are not scheduled to speak, please put your microphone on mute. Please put your microphone on mute.
Number 4. I don't have the copy on. That's right. No.
Someone out there is not listening.
The call-in users, put your microphone on mute.
All right, we can go forward then.
Thank you. That was a lot of feedback.
Yes, it was.
Okay, I've got Forbes and Bench, and I was at Pro Tem Moore.
Here, and Reggie is in Grand Rapids. He's getting ready to call in now.
Councilmember Scherzer.
She's here.
Councilmember Millen.
Present.
Councilmember Balls.
Present.
Councilmember Ostash.
Present.
And Mayor Clark.
Here.
We have 8 members present, 1 absent.
All right. Are there any announcements, Madam Clerk?
No, Mayor, I do not have any this evening.
And,
Therefore,
go ahead.
Therefore, that takes us to public input.
All right. I'd like to remind the speakers of the 3-minute time limit, and also please limit your remarks to the matters before the council. You cannot address or ask questions of council members. Anything will be referred to the manager. We ask that you speak with respect to everybody listening. Thank you.
Speakers, I do want to remind you that your mic will be turned off after your 3 minutes has expired. You can watch the meeting live streamed on SGTV channel 191 or on the city's YouTube channel and participate that way. Our first speaker tonight is Ernest Williams.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, I just unmuted my phone, my speaker.
Go ahead.
Good morning to the Saginaw, Michigan City Council. I have come gratefully to take a few minutes to point out the option of 3D printed housing in your efforts to construct affordable housing in your selected community. Thank you for this time. First, a set of websites for you to research the subject of 3D printed housing. Next, I'll share the options for a cost and feasibility study to provide you with critical decision-making information. I will close with no questions as you requested, but contact information to reach me. 3D printed houses. One website that's really useful is going to be 3dprinted.com, essentially straightforward. On that website, you'll find feasibility models to determine efficacy of 3D printing housing over traditional methods of construction. Another website, hindawi.journals.com. There you'll find conventional construction and 3D printing, a comparison on material and cost. At the Harvard Business School website, you'll find building home for those in need and for the future. On the 3D Natives news site, you'll find 3D printing, the future of construction. And the first The first home built as a 3D by a 3D printer is on the website www.mygh.com. Custom home building, affordable quality. Now, cost and feasibility study options include utilizing independent consultants in engineering and architecture, utilizing manufacturers of 3D printed homes, the collaboration, coordination, and partnering of local community project skills, and utilizing engineering and architectural students at local universities. The least cost option being likely that last one.
To cut you off, Mr. Williams, your time is up. Thank you, though. It's an interesting concept.
Thank you.
It will be referred to the city manager.
Mayor, our next speaker is Nanda Davies.
Ms. Davies, you can unmute.
Hello.
Proceed.
I moved to the city a few years ago because I thought it was a great place that contains an incredibly diverse population with a lot to offer and a lot to experience. But it has since become ugly in recent weeks, and I am ashamed and hurt. On Sunday, July 26th, the police department displayed gross acts of excessive force on an upstanding citizen that has worked alongside some of these very council members. What those officers did was wrong, and it was extraordinarily cruel. On Wednesday, July 29th, Saginaw Police Department released their official written statement regarding the abuse of demonstrator Neil, saying, and I quote, "There was a proportional use of force used." This is outrageous. The videos that captured the confrontation shows that Neil posed no threat and was not disrespectful. To make matters worse, when people started to comment on the social media posts criticizing the investigation's outcome, Saginaw PD handled it by removing any comments that opposed their decision and then proceeded to block them on Facebook, myself included. This is the police department that I am expected to trust will protect me when they have chosen to use middle school social media tactics and have chosen to silence myself and others and violate our rights of freedom of speech. Mind you, I used no threatening or obscene words in the comments. The body cam footage that was released to the public also cut off before the display of force used on Neil was shown. Based on what the body cam footage that was released shows, it seems to me that Saginaw PD was investigating the actions of Neil rather than the excessive and forceful actions used by the officers, which should have been the primary focus of the investigation. I want to know, one, what is the city and the police department doing to improve training and de-escalation tactics to prevent physical force or physical confrontations? And two, what is the city manager and the city council, whom the city manager supposedly answers to, doing to work with the Saginaw PD to rebuild the bridge of trust and faith between its officers and the community? Citizens have been shut out, betrayed, and physically hurt by their officers. The police are by definition there to serve and protect, and I think I speak for myself and many others when I say they are now the ones we need protecting from. And that's all. Thank you.
Mayor, our next speaker is David Chesney.
Mr. Chesney, you can unmute now?
You may put mine on mute, or
No.
can you hear me?
Just proceed. You're on. You're good now.
Okay. Yes, I just want to thank the city council and the mayor for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking about the upcoming vote on legalize or bringing dispensaries into our community. I really firmly believe we need this, as that a lot of people are going into areas of the town and the city that they shouldn't to get the marijuana, and that's a real concern of mine. Is that the age is 21 to buy it, and it's a concern that they're going places they shouldn't be. I think it's about time that we moved on, voted for this, and hopefully that you will. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Chesney.
much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Our next speaker is Andrew Silk.
Mr. Silk, you can unmute now. Mr. Silk? Andrew Silk. If you aren't available, we'll move on. Madam Clerk?
Our next speaker, Mayor, is Sherry DeFore Crozier.
Ms. DeFore Crozier, are you available? If so, you can unmute.
Yes,
now.
I am.
Then you can proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead and proceed.
Hello. Okay. Councilwoman Forbes stated on Facebook, defund the police. Later, she removed this and put an explanation of Neil being her friend. My first thought was, did we watch the same video? Police initially stated that they were there because the protest is on private property without owner's permission. Police state, who is the leader, organizer? Neil and protesters all raised their hands. However, Neil is the one engaging with officers. Neil ordered the others to remove coolers from the FOP parking lot, Neil was assuming the role of the leader. Police state, do you understand we are asking you to leave this private property? Neil states, yes, doesn't leave. Neil is asked to put his hands behind his back. Neil breaks free from the police, throws himself to the ground on his knees, asks the woman if she is recording. She says yes. Neil continues to disobey officers' request to put his hands behind his back, refuting he is resisting, but he already had broke free from officers and refuses to put his hands behind his back, resulting in Neil being tased. A woman claims to be training in de-escalation, others demanding to know why he is under arrest. Neil is tased, but I'm not here to dispute that or argue whether it was right or wrong. Protesters do need to know what is legal. You cannot protest on private property without permission. Sidewalks, you cannot impede walkers' traffic. If you have a permit, you have an obligation to remove agitators. Both city and county have laws and ordinances which can affect your protest and rally. People who hold rallies, protests, the organizers, can be subject to arrest if anyone is actively breaking the law. If you walk and protest in streets, vehicles always have the right of way, exception crosswalks, unless you have a permit. Neil and the protesters, if they would have left, no one would have been tased or arrested. He did not listen to police. Don't defund the police. Educate the people on what their rights actually are, because that's the problem we have today. People think, oh, under the First Amendment, I can do whatever I want, but they forget that you can write anything you want, sure, but go and write on that public sidewalk, even in chalk, and you can be ticketed or arrested for that. Because why? There's a city ordinance. So that's all I'm asking you guys to do is make sure you get some pamphlets out there that you let people know what's proper. The caller before me, well, a couple before me, she was stating that she's ashamed of the police, and I'm not ashamed of the police. I'm not. Do I think it's excessive or not? That's not my job to call, and it certainly isn't the councilwoman's position to call and put on Facebook for everyone to see. Please think about what you're saying before you say it. That's all I'm asking you.
Thank you, Ms. DeFore Crozier. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
And I just want to be sure that Andrew Silk is not with us. Andrew?
Silk.
Okay, Mayor? We
Yep,
will move on.
We will move on.
Yeah, we are now at the remarks of the council.
Okay, I want to remind our council members of the 3-minute limit. Today, we begin with Councilwoman Forbes. Nope, you're still muted. You're still muted. Councilmember Forbes.
You'd think I would have learned that by now, but apparently I haven't. Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank all of our speakers for coming to speak to us tonight. We have so many important topics facing our city and our state and our country, sometimes it can feel overwhelming, but I'm so glad that we are here tonight to work on a couple of them. I wanted to provide an update on one of the issues that has been up a lot in comments lately, and that is the Henry Novell Monument on Ojibwe Island. Council and City Manager Morales received an email this week from a group of folks led by Alexander Verdoni, providing us an update about some of the workings that they've been doing on the back end to gather some more information about the historical context of the monument and what might be an appropriate way to move forward. They've enlisted the help of a sociologist and a historian from Saginaw Valley State University, and they've also talked to some representatives of the Native American community in this region, and they have come up with a plan. What they're proposing is that we could erect an educational marker that would provide some context to the Henry Novell Monument, that would really help educate the community on the background of when this monument was erected and some of the historical details that go into it being put there. So I think that this is a really neat idea, and I really commend them for making these connections. I know that Manager Morales had reached out to a few folks as well right away, and I'm really thankful for that as well. But I am very pleased to see that they have also tentatively lined up some funding to be able to provide this educational marker as well, and that's really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how this goes forward, and of course gathering more information about what the public would like to see. But I think this is really hopeful. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we have, well, Council Member Williams is he with us yet?
I am.
Okay, you are next, Council Member Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep this brief. I want to support the statement from our last speaker about everyone being educated on basically how things work. With everything that's been going on, especially with the last few incidents within our city, I implore our citizens to learn about our city government, learn about the hierarchy and how things work, who can do what and who cannot do. I think it's important that we all learn those things, so when we charge someone with doing something, we know that those people, those persons, they can do what it is we're asking or charging them to do. And that's all that I have. Thank you.
Next, I believe we are at Council Member Ostack.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for our speakers coming out and sharing what's on your mind with us. We do listen and staff will get back with you. Real quick, I'm going to keep it brief tonight because we've got kind of a tech meeting. We had another event this week. I'm sure somebody will talk about it. We got another big CAC census event. So thanks to the city staff and everybody that helped put that on. From what I understand, it was pretty successful. I was there. It was a lot of fun again. This is just kind of something that I've noticed in the city. I just want to make comment to our citizens that whether I live in the Cathedral District, so this is where I witness it most, but I'm sure it's happening other speeding. Point Avenue is a city residence with a speed limit of about 35 miles an hour. It doesn't say 50 plus 60, or I'm going to pass you at that speed. And I've noticed it on Washington, but especially in our residential areas, please be careful. We have children that are playing in yards. They have pets running around as well. So at that speed, I don't see how it is possible to take control of your vehicle and stop an unfortunate incident. So please, I just wanted to kind of, that's my own PSA. Councilwoman Forbes, thank you for bringing up the monument and giving us a report on that. I did reach out to the group after they had emailed us and spoke to them. I'm in full support of what they're doing. So thanks for giving everybody an update on that. Remember, that is all I have for this evening.
Next, we have Councilmember Ball.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a lot to say this evening, but I do like to make a report about the new Youth Build Center here in the city of Saginaw. It's really exciting opportunity for youth in our community to get involved in skilled trades. 18 different building trades they can learn. They can get their high school diplomas or general education diplomas too. We have, like I said, we have 18 different construction trades, from pipe fitting to electrician to windmill building, even solar. We got 18 different pods to teach the kids the trades about skilled trades. I'm looking forward to September to inviting the city manager and the rest of the city council to come down and see the facility. The youth that we have so far has been helping us get the building together, and they're doing an excellent job. We done put up walls, doing wiring, We put our computers in. We got Z-Space computer technology, where you can actually even go in and look at a heart and watch it beat. And with the 3D, you can bring the heart right out to your face and look at each particular part of the heart beat, and even feel it in the ink pen. This is real great opportunity for the citizens of Saginaw and the surrounding areas, especially the kids who have dropped out of high school and want to get their careers back together. It is really exciting opportunity for young people. We got a lot of resources available for them, from counseling to how to get jobs, and we have employers that come and looking for them all the time, thinking about hiring people to do some work. The employers in the city of Saginaw are even excited about the possibility of us training youth to get involved in skilled trades. So I'm looking forward to our grand opening in September. Looking forward to having the whole city council and the treasurers and everybody else to come down, and the clerks to come down and see our fine facility that the youth has helped us even build up. So it's really a great an opportunity for the city of Saginaw. I wore my shirt today, say that we build opportunities, and we building opportunities in the city of Saginaw, one youth at a time, one day at a time, for our community. We did want to speak on another thing, the tragic incident that happened this weekend. It seems like every summer we have people out with guns, and the violence, it has to stop. The crime that's been happening in the city of Saginaw is horrible. As citizens, we need to go out and engage these young people before they actually do something, and talk to them about handling the situation a different way. You know, I've been involved, like I say, everybody know I've been involved in
Councilmember Balls.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Milne.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Echoing Councilmember Balls, I was saddened by the surge in violence we've had this summer. I see community members out there working to combat this, and I know our police department is doing all it can, along with our Michigan State Police partners, to get the guns off our streets. I am pleased at the passage last week of the Castle Museum millage and the County Sheriff's Road Patrol funding, especially since we were assisted by the county last month. So that was very good news. Last thing I want to mention is we're nearing the end of construction season. I just want to say our street paving projects this year have been incredible. 6th Street, Warren Avenue, North Woodbridge, the Adams Boulevard area, and Niagara all look and drive great. I think by the end of this week, the new Norman Street Bridge will be open. And I know I've missed a couple other minor ones. Oh, North Carolina. We did a Light Up the City walk there last year, and there were some just appalling spots. And once again, it's coordination between all our departments. The water department has gone in, done their lead service abatement ahead of some of these projects, and we shouldn't have to open some of these roads up for a long time. They are looking great. So kudos to everyone in Public Works and Water who's helped move this project forward. It's a real noticeable difference. You can't drive anywhere in this city now and not hit some new pavement. So that's going to be my comments for this evening.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Scherzer.
Thank you. I first want to thank you to our public speakers and those watching at home. I appreciate your comments and thoughts. And we as council, our city staff, the city manager, we are truly invested in making our city flourish and thrive. We have great things happening, and we have great things that will continue to happen. We had a birthday, so happy belated birthday to our mayor, Mr. Floyd Clark. I hope you had a great one. And I also want to remind everyone that the Saginaw African Cultural Festival, the virtual festival, will be taking place August 14th through the 16th. So please support them and make sure that you check them out on Facebook page for more information. And then lastly, one of the greatest things that has happened in Saginaw, it is a Black history fact indeed, happened 30 years ago today. 30 years ago, the first African American judge was sworn into office right here in the city of Saginaw. So, to a Saginaw native, my frat brother, a mentor, a leader, and a great friend, congratulations to Judge Terry Clark for 30 years of service in our community. That is all I have.
Thank you. Next is Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
Evening, everyone. I'd like to first thank all of our public speakers. Mr. Williams, I am really interested in the 3D housing. I always talk about affordable housing. So I hope that we get some information from you so that we can move forward with looking at that. Kudos to the staff for Saginaw. We've been working for the last few Fridays on the census count. For my fellow council people who haven't had a chance to come, I do have t-shirts for you, but we've been having a ball. As of today, I'm assuming that we should be close to almost $4 million that we have made. How did I equate that? For every 55 person that signs up, that's $1,800. 50 people give me $1 million. My goal is 5. We have another activity coming up on the 21st, back at Great Giant. We were there on Friday. It was phenomenal. We didn't leave until, we were supposed to be done at 1, but we didn't leave until about 2:30. People were still coming up, filling out the census. City of Saginaw, shout out to everyone who participated. For those who didn't, we really want you to come to Great Giant on Sheridan next on the 21st. There are activities going on all throughout the city. Saginaw, we need to up our numbers so that we can get funded. If you have not done it, please come to one of our activities. So we've got the 21st at Great Giant from 11 to 1, and we've got Saginaw Community Action again, and they're going to have a fun day, food giveaway, all kinds of stuff. And we will be there then. So for all my fellow council people who can come, for those who came, you know I love you. Mayor, if you get out in the streets one more time with that bullhorn, flagging down cars, that's how much fun we've been having. So I'm encouraging every citizen in Saginaw, please take the time out to fill out your census. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, next, I guess it's Councilmember Bench, if I keep my count.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I too want to thank our public speakers for phoning in tonight. We always appreciate hearing from folks, especially when we're not meeting in person. I do want to say, I do have a question, I guess, in general, regarding one public speaker. I am a little curious because I did hear some upset about our police department's social media policy. What is their policy on, allowing comments or allowing critical comments to stay up? Obviously, inappropriate comments aren't allowed, but I am curious as to what the policy is with that. But we did have an election on Tuesday, as a couple of other council members mentioned, millages passing and whatnot. But I just wanted to commend Janet Santos, our clerk, and Chris Bolzman and her staff there in the office of the clerk, because this was challenging on so many levels. We had so many AV voters, which is wonderful and what you want to see. You want to see that kind of participation in any kind of election. But with a pandemic and already struggling to find volunteers who can help out and whatnot, I want to commend everybody who worked the precinct that I worked at. We had a wonderful group. I can only imagine that we had similar groups like that throughout the city at the other precincts. I know that there are hiccups and incidences here and there, but I just think that our clerk's office goes above and beyond with the resources that they have to make sure that everybody can vote and have a positive experience at the polls, or whether it's voting absentee or early. And I just really want to thank them because we have so much going on in the city, and we are faced with so many important issues right now that we can't can't lose sight of so many of the other important services that we provide. And one of those things that we do are our elections. And Janet Santos and her crew are just, I have such confidence in them. And I'm very grateful to them that they do such a wonderful job. And that's all I have today.
Thank you. My comments, I want to first of all thank the public speakers, and I also want to thank the council member updates and thoughts that they've expressed tonight. That's very helpful and good for the public to know. I do want to mention that tonight we're going to introduce, assuming it's passed, which I expect it will, a new zoning ordinance that will allow marijuana facilities in the city. I do want to mention for the public's benefit that there are distance restrictions listed in the ordinance under section 153.611. If you have concerns, you need to look at that and address those concerns to your council members, because we will be addressing this. It'll be introduced today. It will not be acted on for 30 days, but then we will be acting on that ordinance, as we have promised that we would do all along. So if you've got concerns, please address them to your council members. The comments from Councilmember Milne about the parties, or excuse me, about the crime is a concern. It's a very big concern. Our police department has been working very hard to try and shut down these ad hoc parties that have been happening with hundreds of people in parking lots on weekend evenings and late into the night. That's one of the worst situations for the violence that we've been experiencing. I want to thank Chief Ruth for his efforts to keep those down, but I would ask the public to help the police department. If you see one of those parties moving from one lot to another, please notify 911 so we can address them. And thanks, by the way, Councilmember Scherzer, for the birthday wishes. That was very kind of you. Judge Clark, I think he should be commended. His 30 years of service, I have been in front of him multiple times, and I've always found him to be fair, considerate, thoughtful, and thorough. And I really want to commend him on his 30 years of service. Election workers, those who are not up for election this coming November, I would urge all of you on council to participate and volunteer for our clerk's efforts for the precinct workers. My wife and I both did last week, and it was a long day, but it was a fun day. So please, if you're not working, volunteer. The final thing I want to mention is we've talked a little bit today about civics education, learning about government. One of the things that concerns me is our state legislatures have often decided to dictate what teachers can and how they should teach. And as a result, unfortunately, sometimes civics or government has gone either by the wayside altogether or been less thoroughly taught. And that is a huge issue for our public to not have civics education. If you care, please let your legislatures know. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We are now at reports from the manager.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, and I also would like to comment on the election and congratulate City Clerk Janet Santos and election staff for efficiently running the August 4th election, particularly given the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was a great job by Janet and staff, and it's not something that they just did on Tuesday. They've been working on this for quite some time, especially with increased absentee voting in the city. And just for comparison, the citywide voter turnout for August 4th was 21%. In 2018, it was 18%. So it's a 3% increase. And we did have a little bit more, I think, a bigger primary for a state rep and some other things, so that could have an impact as well. But it clearly shows that at least the voter turnout is steady, and so there was at least as much, if not more, work to do, and was tough to get election workers. Usually is tough, as the mayor mentioned, but even tougher given the coronavirus pandemic at this time. Another item, again, we always want to mention this so that people are aware, but we continue to encourage people who are having difficulty with paying water utility bills to contact 211 for assistance. A lot of the CARES funding that was provided in Michigan is on a first come, first served basis. So we don't want people to wait until January when maybe we begin to do turnoffs again across the state of Michigan. We want people to get in there and be first in line if they can so that they can receive assistance. And final item is I wanted to report to council. I did send you an update, but I wanted to mention it during the meeting as well so you're aware that the city did receive CDBG, Community Development Block Grant COVID funds for economic development. The COVID funds are being used to prevent, prepare, and respond to COVID-19. And council approved those funds some time ago, and $500,000 was awarded to the SEBC. Those funds have started to be allocated and to small businesses within our community. They were divided into two allocations, $300,000 for forgivable loans and $200,000 for micro and macro loans. $300,000 is being awarded by city staff at the direction of the SEBC, and $200,000 will be awarded by the SEBC board. So if you know anyone who has a small business or is seeking assistance for that, please have them contact the SEBC to get more information. So far, out of the $300 allocation, we've spent approximately $111,000, and we're still going through applications at this time, so it's not too late. So again, if you know any small business owners that are having difficulties or are seeking assistance, this is another option for them, and that's the SEBC, and they can call the city to get more information. And that concludes the management update.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Do any council members have a question?
I got a question.
Go first. Is that Councilmember Williams?
And Balls.
Councilmember Balls, please go ahead.
Mr. Manager, I would like to know, you can get some information from the city clerk to find out how many of the absentee or ballots that were spoiled, what percentage of them was bad. I think the public need to know that so that the people that's filling out those applications can do a better job, or maybe other organizations can get out and educate them on the proper way to fill out those forms.
Yep, we can definitely have the clerk look into that and get a report back to council on that item.
Thank you. Thank you too, Brenda, for helping out in advance.
Are there any other questions for the city manager?
I got a question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I got a question. I received a call, and we talked about this morning, and we didn't know if it was going to come up about the money for police and firemen. Can you just give us can you just give the citizens an update on where we are with that, sir?
Yeah, I did send an email to council this afternoon. I'm not sure if everyone saw it, but we did receive a few questions about that previously during the last two council meetings. So you should have a detailed update where we are right now. We're reviewing our expenses that we have had with police and fire. If you all recall, you were all copied on emails. We provided, as the city, 40 hours of additional PTO time that was just granted to all the employees, including police and fire. And we also, anyone who was working earned a 1-to-1 hour for additional leave time up to 80 hours. So we did provide 400 or 120 hours of additional comp time if people were working in those early days of the coronavirus response back in March and April and early May. So in my discussions with the state of Michigan, they asked if we did have any programs for public safety previously that provided additional compensation. I did talk to them about the additional leave, particularly the 40 hours. and they indicated that they believed that that would be something that could be reimbursed in that grant. It didn't have to be an additional $1,000 payment. It could be, but it could also be a reimbursement for the city. And that is something I think we definitely need to look at further. We're going to run some more payroll reports after this, but we've that emergency leave time just in public safety, at this point, we believe it has cost about $80,000. So I know it sounds like something that is additional leave time maybe isn't something that costs money, but obviously it does. I believe that that's something that we should look at for reimbursement, and we'll see, and we'll probably talk to the state of Michigan again to see if they still believe that's something that would be reimbursable. The main reason why I believe that we should look at that as an option is because we are looking at shortfall of over the next this previous fiscal year and the current fiscal year of revenue sharing of about $600,000, which is all state shared revenue. That's the estimate that we received from the state of Michigan, and that's a significant loss in our general fund revenue. So I think it's incumbent upon us to look where we can to make up some of those funds any way that we can. In my view, the estimation, and I believe that our controller concurs with this, I think that is a pretty conservative estimate given the amount of loss that the state of Michigan has seen in revenue. I anticipate that it could be even greater than that. Combine that with the increase in our annual required contribution, which is our ARC for our pensions, and I think we're looking at some significant issues that we have to deal with. So if this is something that we can do, I think it's something we should review further. And as I mentioned, we'll get another report that finance will run based upon the last payroll, which was run last week, and then we'll get back with the Michigan Department of Treasury, see if they still think that that is an option, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Manager. I would urge all council members to look at that email from the manager on this topic. It's quite informative. Any other questions for the manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Millen.
Proceed.
Tim, I'm not sure if this is the best time, but it seemed like it might be. The question is actually for Amy on the upcoming ordinances we're going to be looking at. And since it involves more than one of them, I thought it might be best to bring it up now. Would you like it now or when we're doing the ordinances?
If there's a question on the ordinances, it would be most appropriate to do it when those are before the council.
Okay, no problem. I just didn't know if, since it involved more than one, we'll discuss it with the first one then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the manager? Anybody? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to move on.
Thank you, Mayor. Your next order of business is the consent agenda.
The consent agenda has been available at City Hall, on the city website, and on SGTV channel 191. Are there any exceptions to be noted by the clerk at this time? Any exceptions? All right, last time, any exceptions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as provided?
So move more.
Support.
Councilman Millen.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? The matter is carried. Next, Madam Clerk,
Your next order of business is boards, commission, and committee reports.
are there any reports from any members of city boards and commissions? Anybody? Any members? Hearing none, let's move on, Madam Clerk.
We are now at appointment of board and commission members.
We have the days. Go
We
ahead.
do have one tonight, is to approve the council appointment of Evelyn McGovern to the Saginaw Transit Authority Regional Services Board with a term to expire December 31st of 2020.
Is there a motion to approve?
So move more.
Or
Supported by Scherzer. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, this is
Who is it?
Go ahead, Jamie.
Jamie.
It's my understanding that per STAR's bylaws that the applications would normally be forwarded to STARS and that the STARS board would recommend. Is that right, Floyd? You're on that board.
It is normally, I guess I had assumed it had happened, yes, but it is, the board bylaws do provide that it would be appropriate to go to the board first for any questions or objections. Has that happened, Madam Clerk?
No, I believe it has not.
Then there may be an appropriate time for a motion to table this for that purpose, or to.
You have a motion on the floor with a second, so you have to vote on it.
Then, okay. That is correct. Is there any further discussion?
Councilman Millen?
Yes.
With the short expiration date here, is this the completion of a term of someone who left the board?
Yes, it's filling a vacancy.
Was it a long-standing vacancy or someone recently left?
I cannot remember which member it was that resigned.
Councilmember Forbes, do you remember?
There's been a couple that have come and go, but this seat has, this particular seat has been open for I think about 6 months.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Again, any further discussion? One of the questions might be for council members to decide whether this should go to the STARS board or whether we should approve it without that. That's the motion on the table at this time.
I have a question.
Madam Clerk, or Madam, sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, I'm not understanding. STARS picks who they want to be on their board. It's not a citywide thing where we do it. I mean, I'm hearing we're holding up a motion that was put on the floor because they want to do it.
No, it isn't a question if they want to do it. The bylaws of the authority provide that applications for position on the board be sent to them to review first before it goes before council. And that hasn't happened. That doesn't mean council can't choose to appoint the person anyway, even without that happening. It really is something that we should do, but we do not have to do.
Also, Mayor, if I may mention, this is the only applicant that was submitted for this vacancy.
It would be appropriate, certainly if this passes, to have some word to the STARS board that's how it proceeded. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the table? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
I would like to abstain.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed to the appointment?
Mr. Mayor, can we do a roll call vote?
Yes, we can. Madam Clerk?
Yes, one clarification I'm going to ask Attorney Lusk is I don't believe there's an abstention here because there's no money involved with approving an appointment.
Jamie is a STARS employee.
Correct.
So she's effectively voting on a member of, she would be voting on
her board, that oversees her position. Yes. Okay, so that would be proper to abstain.
Correct.
All right, thank you for the clarification. Okay, roll call vote.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Scherzer. Scherzer.
Yes.
Councilmember Millen.
Yes.
Councilmember Balls.
Yes.
Councilmember Ostash. Councilmember Ostash.
No, you're not. Louder.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Councilmember Forbes.
Abstain.
Councilmember Bench,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
We have 8 yes and 1 abstain. Motion is approved.
Thank you. Next, Madam Clerk.
We are now at ordinance introduction. Our first ordinance tonight is to repeal Chapter 118 and replace with sections 118.01 through 118.23 titled Chapter 118, Licensing of Marijuana Establishments of Title 11 Business Regulations.
Is there a motion to introduce?
Bench moves.
It has been
More
moved. Is there-
support.
More supported. Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Councilman Millen,
Yes.
I have to first begin with the question I had for Amy. In this ordinance, and it relates to ordinance 2 that we're going to do about the zoning, section 118.21, where it says this ordinance change only takes effect if the zoning changes put forth are not approved. And then it says, if those amendments to the zoning code are not adopted, marijuana establishments shall be deemed prohibited from developing within the city. So the question really is, in the absence of any separate opt-out ordinance, would I be correct? The only affirmative way to opt out is to pass this ordinance and then not pass the zoning ordinance.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? I didn't quite follow that.
Okay, in ordinance 1, amending chapter 118.
Yeah, I got all that.
Oh, so since we are not in consideration of and do not have before us any opt-out ordinance, where if we did nothing, we're opting in, would the only way to have a positive opt-out be to pass this ordinance, but not pass the zoning one and put this clause into effect?
Well, the city does currently have an opt-out ordinance on the books.
But it sunsets.
Well, I think you're missing a point, both of you. Councilmember Milne is correct. If we pass this ordinance and do not pass the second zoning ordinance, the existing opt-out ordinance remains in effect, but only until the sunset. After the sunset, or before the sunset, we would have to either continue the opt-out or it would automatically expire and all facilities would be allowed.
That is not what this clause says. This clause says if we pass this and don't pass the zoning, we are deemed prohibiting their development within the city.
Councilmember Millen, what was that section of the clause you're mentioning in the ordinance?
118.21.
And the title of that is Penalties and Remedies?
No, 2.1, effect tie bar.
That's 18. That's 118.22, folks.
All right, you're right.
Thank you. It is 2.2. Effect tie barred.
And this section has no sunset to it. This would be a permanent opt-out unless we did something else.
You are correct. It does provide that if amendments to the zoning ordinance are not adopted simultaneously,
okay,
marijuana establishments would be prohibited in the city.
With no sunset.
Correct.
Then I stand corrected. Okay.
Well, clarification question then, Attorney Lusk, if I may, if we do not pass this, replace this 118 chapter, we would still have in place the opt-out ordinance, correct?
What Councilmember Milne's question was if the licensing ordinance was adopted and the zoning ordinance was not. in which case the current sunset ordinance would be repealed.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
So,
Any other questions?
Mayor, yeah.
Yes,
Just
Councilor
trying
Rosses.
Yeah, trying to follow the conversation. So we need to pass the first two ordinances, correct?
If you want to opt in, the licensing and zoning ordinances are tied together. Specifically so you don't end up in a position where you're zoned for opting in, but there's no control over licensing, or vice versa. You have control over licensing, but no control over where they go. So the two are specifically tied together. It's commonplace in other jurisdictions as to how their ordinances are drafted.
Just making sure after the current conversation, because that's how I understood it when I read it.
Any other questions?
I'm ready for comments if we're done questions on it.
Well, this is questions or comments now. We're going to be voting once the discussion.
Yes. And I would like to continue some comments then.
All right.
This is for the benefit of the
I'm
public.
not sure where it would fit.
Okay. Under this proposed change, the first paragraph of the change is 118.01, the purpose. And the purpose of this chapter is to license and regulate recreational or adult use marijuana establishments to the extent they are licensed under the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, being initiated Law 1 of 2018 MCL 333.27951, a legal term I'm not sure how to pronounce, as amended. The city does not intend that licensing and regulation under this chapter be construed as a finding that such businesses are legal under state or federal law. Although some specific uses of medical marijuana are allowed by the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, marijuana continues to be classified as a Schedule I controlled substance under federal law, and as such, growing, distributing, and possessing marijuana other than as part of a federally authorized research program, as well as other activities as set forth in federal law, is a violation of federal law. By requiring a license and compliance with requirements as provided in this chapter, the city intends to protect, to the extent possible, the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents of and visitors to the city that may result from the activities of persons who unilaterally or on the advice of their own attorney determine that they may legally operate a recreational or adult use marijuana establishment. After reading this purpose statement, I fail to see how any public official could vote in favor of the introduction of this ordinance. It clearly states we are discussing an illegal substance and attempts to put a patina of legality on it by covering it in minute regulations. We have no other city ordinance addressing Class 1 substances such as morphine, methadone, etc. These are federally regulated. The statement of our intent to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents and visitors to the city can be better accomplished by opting out of allowing such facilities. I have some additional comments for later, but I wish to allow other members to speak. I'm not planning a filibuster.
All right. Any other comments or discussion?
This is Jamie. I have a couple questions and comments.
Proceed.
I'm curious first to talk a little bit about the possible combination of both a medical and recreational ordinance, and if that is been something that's been considered. It's my understanding that some of them, the different products that you might get from a medical facility are different from a recreational facility, and so I'd like to be sure that that our residents can access a medicinal level if they need it.
Okay. Anything else? Any other comments?
Oh,
by
sure.
the way, was that
I guess
question?
I was waiting for a discussion on that, but I can go to the next item.
No. If there is anyone wish to? Wouldn't it be council members at this point? That would be fine.
Okay.
Mayor, I think that question can be better answered by our attorney. versus us.
Well,
Because my understanding, when we started this venture, we started it on recreation because marijuana, as we know now, we did not opt in or out for medical marijuana. And so I guess I'm like Jamie now. I mean,
I guess my point would be that we could have a duplicative ordinance with the same sort of guidelines and rules that we've gone through, that the staff has done such great work researching for us. I think that you could virtually duplicate, just with of course the different state legalities that would be required.
I'm not sure this is the right time for that discussion because we have a specific motion in front of the council, and what you're talking is some kind of other motion or other ordinance entirely. I think we have to stick to the topic of this specific ordinance.
If I may, city staff did not consider, in drafting these ordinances, putting together a medical marijuana opt-in plan, simply because that wasn't the instruction of council. Council had instructed us to draft opt-in ordinances for adult use in the city, and several members of staff were very diligently in putting those ordinances together. It's certainly something that can be considered if that's the direction of council. However, because it is two separate laws with two somewhat different sets of administrative rules, that likely would have to be looked at as a separate ordinance in itself.
And again, I think it's beyond the purview of the motion in front of us. I would ask that we restrict our discussion to the topic of this particular ordinance. And one thing everyone needs to remember, if we were to stop today and not adopt this ordinance so that we could look at something else, we now have a time issue with the sunset provision. So I do think we need to address this ordinance at this time. Any other discussion on?
I have another couple items, if it's okay.
It is okay.
Okay, I would just like to touch on the social equity piece of this. So the state has made a decision that certain counties that were disproportionately impacted by the prohibition of marijuana would receive certain benefits. So I think this is really important because something that really matters to me in this ordinance is that local folks actually have a shot to benefit from this new industry. So correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain discounts that folks get at the state level on their application fees if they've had a former marijuana charge, if they've been a primary caregiver, if they have grown medical marijuana, and also if they are a resident of a county that has been targeted, like Saginaw County, for 5 of the last 10 years. So I have that right, Amy?
I can't verify that without looking up the specific portions of the proposal and the regulations, but the social equity program is effectively a discount program based on certain criteria for state licenses.
Okay, I think this is a real opportunity for our citizens to be able to perhaps get a discount at the state level, so I just wanted to bring that up. Something that I've been hearing a lot from citizens is they really like the idea of the proximity rules. I think that this would really prevent too many potential facilities, and I think that that the proximity rule is really important. However, I don't necessarily see how it would be useful in the areas of growing, processing, and testing facilities. All those facilities would be, they would not have a sign. They would be not open to the public in any way. And I don't think that there's any harm in having them nearer to each other than what the rules are in the ordinance. And so I would like to propose that we amend the ordinance to remove the proximity requirements for any of the other areas separate from the provisioning centers.
Point of order, we have a motion on the floor, so we can't do a double motion. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
Councilman Millen.
Wait, hang on. I believe technically, you can correct me on this if I'm not correct, Madam Attorney, but there can be a motion to amend the motion. And that would have to be approved and passed before you would proceed to the main motion. You can also move to table something, but again, we've got the time bar or the time issue. So if you are actually, so Councilmember Forbes, are you making a motion at this time?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to revise the language in the ordinance to not require proximity rules for all facilities separate from provisioning centers.
All right.
I'd also like to bring up that it's my understanding that the K-12 proximity rule, so no facilities of any kind too close to K-12 schools, is part of the state law, so that would remain.
Could I interject here? The portion Councilman Forbes wants to work on is in the next ordinance, the zoning ordinance. That is not part of this ordinance.
Very good point of order. Thank you. So actually, that would be out of order, your motion at this time, Councilmember Forbes. So we would need, are there any other comments on the main motion at this time? And it wasn't seconded in any event, Councilmember Forbes?
I have one. Oh.
So there's more comments, Councilmember
Millen, yes. Just a short one. We have another section in this ordinance, 118.13, indemnification of city, where it says, by accepting a license issued pursuant to this chapter, the applicant and licensee agree to indemnify, defend, and hold harmless the city, its officers, elected and appointed officials, employees, and insurers against all liability claims or demands rising out of or in connection to the operation of a marijuana establishment in the city. It has been my experience that when you try to put this kind of blanket indemnification in place, you are expecting to get sued, and indeed, sometimes this sort of indemnification is then nullified because they are found to have a reasonable claim that could not foreseeably have been given away before. So I think this section simply additionally points out why we should not be in this game, because as a municipality, as a corporation, we are exposing ourselves to liabilities which at this time are unknown. And the best way not to expose ourselves to it is not to allow these facilities. And that's all.
All right. Anybody else? Any further discussion? I'll ask 3 times. Any further discussion? One more time. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's call the question. Madam Clerk, if you'll simply restate the motion.
Get my mic on. An ordinance to repeal Chapter 118 and replace with sections 118.01 through 118.23, titled Chapter 118, Licensing of Marijuana Establishments of Title 11 Business Regulations.
Hearing the motion restated, all in favor?
Aye.
Madam Mayor, can you roll call vote?
Yes, we can. We were waiting to see, but let's do that, Madam Clerk, and be fine with that.
Councilmember Millen.
No, opposed.
Councilmember Balls. Councilmember Balls.
Can I refrain from voting?
Nope. You're
No, sir.
required by charter to vote.
Yes.
Councilmember Ostash.
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Councilmember Forbes.
You didn't hear it. Councilmember Forbes.
Yes.
Councilmember Bench.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
Yes.
Councilmember Scherzer.
Yes.
And Mayor Clark.
Yes.
We have 8 yes and 1 nay. Motion is approved.
All right, Madam Clerk, the next item.
That ordinance will be laid over under the charter provision. Our next ordinance is to add sections 153.601 title, section 153.603 purpose, section 153.605 applicability, section 153.607 definitions, sections 153.609 approval procedures for marijuana establishments, sections 153.611 authorized marijuana establishments, section 153.613 consumption violations, section 153.615 penalties, section 153.617 rights, titled marijuana establishments of title 15 land usage.
Is there a motion to introduce?
Bench makes the motion.
Or support.
More are supported. Is there any discussion on this ordinance?
If I could raise one point to address a concern Councilmember Forbes had raised with regard to the last ordinance, and the setback requirements that are set forth in this zoning amendment. I do want to point out that there is a process in this ordinance that allows for individuals and applicants to seek a waiver of that separation distance requirement before the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that is outlined as a possibility in the ordinance.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion on the table?
Yes, Councilman Millen.
Proceed.
In this ordinance, I'm echoing Councilman Forbes a little bit. Section 153.611 is the separation distances. And looking at the table of separation distances, they appear to have a certain logic. The separation distances vary from 1 city block to 4 city blocks, except for the 100-foot distance from a church or place of worship. 33 and a third yards. And one might ask why this small a distance. And it was because without contorting our zoning process in this way, there was almost no way in this city to put any facility, especially retail. I think we're being shown something most people don't want to admit, that Saginaw is not an appropriate place for these facilities. And I would have liked to propose changing the separation on churches to 500 feet, but I am told that this makes the previous ordinance moot by restricting all the available locations. I will simply suggest that we not approve the zoning ordinance, which will have the same effect without showing our lack of respect for these houses of worship, many with black pastors who have been very vocal opponents to recreational marijuana.
Any other comments or discussion?
Mayor. I'd like to comment.
Yeah, name please.
Stash.
Proceed.
Yeah. So in regards to what Councilman Millen was just talking about, the churches, I'd like to make reference to Genesee, where a lot of the churches reside, and also liquor stores. I'd also like to point out to the fact that the marijuana facilities that I'm seeing around the state are very beautiful facilities. These people that are in this business as well take it very seriously. And some of the designs that I've seen that would actually come into Saginaw would actually be, you wouldn't really even recognize the business. So if we want to talk about areas that we would not have, I want to just reference the facts at Genesee Street, where a lot of this corridor could be available. And also referencing back to the Planning Commission meeting, which I watched, as the bubbles start to rise, as they start to look at the buffering areas of the city, sometimes I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem, because it does already start to eliminate a lot of areas. So I don't think it's like they're going to be popping up on each street corner. But I'd be correct in saying that from what everybody else is seeing. Okay.
Is there any other discussion or comment?
I understand the concern, but I have to disagree respectively.
No, all right, thank you.
Mayor,
Councilmember Forbes, I
I have
believe.
a comment.
Go ahead.
Since I hope that I am now doing it at the proper time, I would like to make a motion to amend the proximity requirements to include only these rules for growing and not for any of the other license types.
All right. I'm not sure I understand the motion. Is there, perhaps you could restate it in the form of a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we amend the proximity requirements to only be required for growing licenses and not the other types.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion? Is there a second?
I had a hard time hearing. Can you repeat that, please, woman?
I'm sorry. Is there a second? I couldn't tell. Councilmember Scherzer, was that you that commented? And was it a second?
Support.
All right. We have a motion and support on a motion to amend. Madam Attorney, is that appropriate at this time? Any issues on?
It is, but I just want to raise the point for clarification because with the last ordinance, Councilmember Forbes had raised the language of the 1,000 feet from schools. And I want to make certain it is not your intent at this time to waive that requirement because it is possible to waive it. So I think we need to be very careful in the language.
I would like to amend my amendment to protect the K-12 1,000 foot rule.
That would require a second as well.
A second.
It has been seconded. Okay. Madam Clerk, do you think you can restate the motion for discussion? Madam Clerk, where did we go? Okay. We seem to have lost Madam Clerk for a few seconds here.
Can unmute.
I cannot hear you, Madam Clerk.
Yeah, I'm trying. There. Did it unmute?
Okay.
Okay, I think can you hear me?
Not well, but
not as
well.
Floyd's picture's coming up on Janet's thing.
Yeah, Janet was buffering on mine.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Okay, we got you now.
Okay, so the second amendment by form, and I didn't second that.
Janet, we're not getting you clear. You're froze now.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
That's better.
Yep, try again.
I did not get who seconded the second amendment.
Oshtash seconded the amendment to the
Thank you. Okay, so the second amendment is to protect the 1,000 foot rule for the K through 12 school systems.
All right. Is there any discussion on the amendment to the amendment?
Yes.
Proceed.
Councilman Millen. In looking at the language of this ordinance, I'm trying to find out what we actually need to change because we have one simple definition, marijuana establishment. That then the sub of that is all the types that we know of. So are we amending our definitions or are we creating a separate one for growing only that we want to change the setback requirements? Because we don't have a separate separation requirement for each type just for marijuana establishments.
It's a good question. Madam Attorney, any comments on that?
The There will be language drafted if this is approved that provides that all of the setback requirements that are currently listed there will apply to growers only. And that the 1,000-foot setback requirement from schools applies to all marijuana establishments.
Is that go ahead.
It'll take some drafting to get there, but that is the intent of the motion, and that's what the language will ultimately provide for.
Right. I want to be clear, Councilmember Forbes, is that your intent with the motions?
That is my intent.
All right.
I got a question on that.
Yeah, proceed, Councilmember Balls.
Do that include a person who that's only facilities, or is those homes too?
Are you talking about individuals who personally grow?
Yes.
There is no regulation of that.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Mayor?
Yes,
Mayor?
go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I think just for the purposes of public information, I'm wondering if we should just go over the distances that we're talking about, because I think it's been a little bit confusing with the two, with the motion and then the amended motion. As far as I understand it, the motion is to eliminate the separation distances for all businesses other than growers. Correct?
Correct.
So the separation distances that are in there, excluding the first one, which would apply to all, and that's 1,000 feet of a public or private K through 12. The second separation distance is 250 feet from a publicly owned park or playground. The third one is 100 feet of a church or other place of worship, 500 feet from a hospital, and 250 feet from a halfway house or other transitional housing operated or licensed by the state or federal government, and 500 feet of another marijuana establishment location. So the proposal is to remove all of those, excluding the school distance, from any marijuana business other than a grow facility. For informational purposes, when we looked and compared the ordinance when we were drafting it, those are very common in most other cities' ordinances. These are not onerous in my view, and they're not uncommon. And I think the city attorney would concur with that, what we looked at.
I would actually say that the setback requirements we ultimately ended up drafting into this ordinance are much smaller than you would find in a lot of other communities. And that's because there was a lot of work, especially with Jeff Klopsick in the GIS and John Stemple, continuously reviewing and running multitudes of scenarios, different setback requirements, to set it up in a way where we could still allow meaningful development, but still provide some protection for sensitive uses.
Anybody else commenting or?
Councilman Millen?
Yes.
I would just like to point out what Amy just said is the basis of my comment. Other cities that have done this have had wider separations. We had to do these separations to find anywhere to put these businesses. And that is what makes us an unsuitable place for these businesses.
All right. Anybody else?
So, yeah, Mayor, just to clarify, so I know exactly what Jamie's talking about, that you're talking about growers only. So provisioning centers in all of the zone districts would still have the same distance, except for the growers.
No, the motion is to remove the separation distances for all facilities except growers.
Except growers.
So retailers, provisioning centers, secure transporters, and the compliance testing facilities. Councilmember Forbes' motion is to remove any separation distances with regard to those facilities, except for the schools.
And if I may at this time, I cannot support. when we talk sensitive uses, I think we have to consider the public and the idea of what a sensitive use is. I would certainly think that halfway houses, for example, would certainly be a sensitive use. And to have a marijuana facility next door to a halfway house, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that, no matter what facility it would be. The same goes for a church. I don't think we should disrespect churches that much by saying we can have 5 marijuana facilities around a church if someone chose. And the same goes for the parks and recreational facilities. I think they are sensitive. I don't want children to have to be next door to a marijuana facility, whether it's a provisioning or some other center. I think we have to respect the goal of sensitive uses. And quite frankly, I would have increased the distances, certainly for churches, if it was my choice. But I don't think we should be removing these, nor from if I understand the motion properly, it would allow them to be next door to each other 5 in a row. Well, if you remove all of it except for growers, that removes the ones about next to each other. So that's the current motion. I cannot support that.
Comment, Mayor?
Yes, please do.
I just want to be realistic about these other facilities. These are going to be like industrial looking warehouses with no signage. There's going to be no indication of what is going on inside of these facilities besides their exemplary security systems. I'm not saying that I want these to be located next to churches. I'm saying that I don't care how close they are to each other. And that's why I think we need to get rid of the proximity rules. These are not going to be even identified. There's no reason to think that them being close to each other is going to be in any way negative for our citizens. Thank you.
All right, Madam
Millen.
Yeah. I want a clarification.
Well, that was my question
city
too.
Attorney or our manager. That's not what we understand the motion is. Is that correct?
That's correct in my view. I think it's actually the motion that was made and seconded is the opposite of what Councilmember Forbes just said. The motion that was made would remove all of the setbacks for everything except for growers, which would mean, as the mayor was commenting, you could have a provisioning site next door to the park or next door to a church. That's why I made the clarification. I think when Councilmember Forbes spoke at the previous ordinance, she said it opposite to what she said this time. So I think there's just some confusion about that. Maybe I think Councilmember Forbes just cleared it up, but the motion was already made that would do the opposite of that.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Is it section G that Councilman Forbes wishes to remove? Just that sales locations could be, or other marijuana? Well, no, see the way it says it would, yeah, you can't just do section G. That's all.
Under the current motion, it's my
Mayor.
understanding that only growers would have distance restrictions, although the 1,000 foot
What
for
do I do?
everybody would still apply. That's how I understand the motion, existing motion.
Is it possible for me to rescind my motion so that I can make clear what it is I intend?
Madam Attorney, how would you handle this, please?
The city clerk can correct me if she finds a different way easier, but I think it would be easier at this point, since we have 2 motions to amend on the main motion, to at least vote on those 2 motions to amend and then start again if there's a different to be made.
If we do that, then everyone needs to understand that if the purpose is to not approve the motion as it stands, the 2 motions, and then because it's the reverse of what Councilmember Forbes really wants, then we have to vote no to the two amendments in
And
order to.
I believe
in order
the clerk was trying to weigh in too.
Yeah, but they'll have to vote no in order to then be able to have a restated First Amendment.
That would be correct, Mayor Clark.
Thank you. All right. Are we prepared to vote on the motion to amend the motion first? That's where we are. Madam Clerk, if you could repeat the motion to amend the motion.
I will recap it best I can. The amendment to the second amendment is to protect the 1,000-foot rule for kindergarten through 12 school systems.
The current ordinance has that protection. So if we want to get to the original start, we need to defeat this motion. So all in favor of this motion, say aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Hey,
Believe the motion fails.
Well, Mayor, any nays require a roll call vote
Then
per
we'll do a roll.
charter.
All right.
So this would be Councilmember Balls.
Hey.
Councilmember Ostash.
Hey.
Councilmember Williams.
hey,
Councilmember Forbes. Forbes? Is that a no? Councilmember Bench?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore?
No.
Councilmember Scherzer? Councilmember Millen?
No.
Mayor Clark?
No.
We have 9 no and 0 yes votes, so your motion is defeated.
So we have to now do the same thing on the original motion to amend.
Mr. I just want to point for clarification. I do believe because Jamie is the original motion, made the original motion and the amendments, that she can rescind her motions and her amendments.
Madam Attorney? Robert's Rules of Order.
You would have to vote on a rescind to rescind. It's not automatic. I rescind a motion.
Right. It ultimately gets you to the same place.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
just cleaner right now, I think, to just defeat your motions since it's not where you really wanted to go.
It
So
would require a motion to rescind, which would require a vote.
Correct. So this is a clean.
All right.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, you froze up again. Just a moment. We'll wait till she comes back.
I think the clerk is correct. This is one place we differ from Roberts. It's our policy to do it this way.
Which we can do. But she has to be able to do roll call, so we have to have her back.
Yeah, I know. Hello?
So you ready to vote on your First Amendment?
If you can hear, I'll call the vote and you let us know if you've heard the answers. All right? All in favor of the original motion to amend, say aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Hey.
We do need Madam Clerk, then we'll need a roll.
Okay. Councilmember Ostash. Councilmember Ostash.
I'm unmuted. No.
Councilmember Williams.
no,
Councilmember Forbes.
No.
Councilmember Bench.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
No.
Councilmember Scherzer.
No.
Councilmember Millen.
No.
Councilmember Balls.
No, I hope we learned something.
And Mayor Clark.
No.
We have 0 yeas and 9 nays. Motion is denied.
All right, we are back to the original motion to introduce ordinance 153.601, etc.
Mr. Mayor, Stemple
yes.
here. Have a moment.
Pardon me?
This is John Stemple. If I could have a moment.
Council members, would you be willing to entertain comments from our expert in the field of zoning and enforcement?
Yes, I believe he could help eliminate some questions.
Other council members, any objections? Hearing no objections, then go ahead and proceed, Mr. Stemple.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just want to share a few things with you folks tonight. Councilman Ostash, your comments about the design of these facilities, what they look like. We visited other places, and they do generate nice buildings, nice properties. If they are managed properly, they can be a contributing asset to a community. We have seen it the other way as well. We've seen properties that are not managed properly. Their investment in the properties do not reflect good business practices, and they do not contribute. On the same token, related to the zoning and the separation distances, staff from the city did spend a lot of time with the maps, with the zoning districts. Amy Lusk, Jeff Klopsick, our chief inspector, myself. I'm probably forgetting somebody. We met with Mr. Morales. And what is being proposed tonight, we kind of look at as a starting point. This is all something new to the city of Saginaw. We have a city that's changed over time. If you watch our We Build video, you can see that. We went from industrial, we had logging, we had sawmills, we have medical. And in our view, my view, creating a starting point that gives us a kind of a clear picture of what this will look like as it is being implemented is a good starting point. Ordinances, as you know, because you've all been part of amending ordinances over time, ordinances can be so. Having the starting point with these separation distances, I think, is a good starting point. It gives us some security, it gives us some time to kind of test things out and see how things are working. And if they are working and we're getting good quality folks that want to develop in the city, then we can change. The biggest thing on the growers and the industrial side of it, you have to realize that there are many industrial zoning districts that are embedded in residential neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods were once industrial because there were railroad tracks that the neighborhood industry formed around them. And that industry is gone, and now these vacant parcels are still zoned industrial, but they're still in the middle of a residential neighborhood. I think we need to see how this all plays out on a slow basis, and then if it seems to work out okay for the city, then we can change things. But let's take a cautious approach in the beginning, and then go forward from. This is simply my opinion from 27 years of doing this type of work. Not that I'm a proponent or opponent of marijuana sales, recreational or otherwise, but I think we need to do what's best for the best interest of our citizens, because of all the different types of zoning that are scattered throughout the city. It's a very complicated matter, and to arbitrarily discard these separate distances on the first go around with this situation, I think is not a good path for us to take at this point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Stemple. Is there any other council members who has a comment on the motion, the original motion?
I would, this council member Millen, I'd just like to make a short comment about Mr. Stemple's remarks, because it's not something we've all talked about much, but we have in our inspections department practical experience with this already. We contract out our inspections to jurisdictions that already have some of these facilities. So our inspections department is speaking from experience already, not even just looking at them other places, but where they've had to put their name or initials on documents.
Thank you. I'm going to speak up now simply because I think it's an appropriate time. My personal desire would be to have all of the distances at 500 feet or 1,000 for a school. However, the ones that have been presented at least are reasonable, and they do take consideration of the sensitive uses. And I think we need to consider John's comments because sensitive uses do exist. So I would ask that the motion as it stands be approved.
Support. Is that a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Well, the motion has already been made to introduce the ordinance and seconded. So it's really on the table already. It's a question of what are the council members ready to proceed on that motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to try this again. I'd like to first apologize. And I appreciate the information from Amy and from John about this, but I would like to move forward anyway, which is I would like to propose an amendment for the proximity rules to exclude dispensaries, to include dispensaries as being the only license where proximity rules take place. The other license types.
I'm sorry, it's retailers. Dispensaries is a different term. It has different legal connotations. So I
would like to have the proximity rules only go forward for retailers and not the other license types.
Madam Attorney, do you feel that's an understandable motion for an ordinance preparation point of view?
Clerk, please read that back.
I have that the amendment is to proximity rules to include retailers only and exclude other license types.
Again, with the exception that the 1,000 feet stays in for schools for everyone?
Yes, please.
Do you have that, Madam Clerk, now as part of the motion, the original motion? Once we have it written, I would ask that it be read. Well, first of all, is there a second for the motion? Maybe we need to ask that first. Is there a second? I think then hearing none, the motion dies. All right, then we're back to discussion on the original motion, or someone could call the question.
I'd be happy to call the question.
Okay, we have Madam Clerk, you want to say something?
Well, was that a motion to call the question? Because then you'd have to have a second and vote on it because you're taking debate away from the table.
If it's required to be in the form of a motion, yes, move the question.
Is there a second on calling the question?
Yes.
All right, we have a second. Is there a discussion, or is there no discussion on this? I think there's no discussion on this.
No discussion.
Right. All right. All in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think it's carried. There is no opposition. And we are back to the original motion to approve the ordinance as read by the clerk originally. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? I've only getting one or two ayes, so everybody speak up. Pardon me?
You got more than that.
Well, let's do a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Are there any nays?
Well, that's
yes.
Okay. Are there any nays?
Yes.
We do need a roll call.
Okay. Oh, let me look at my sheet here. Councilmember Williams.
Aye.
Councilmember Forbes.
Nay.
Councilmember Bench. Councilmember Bench.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
Sorry, yes.
Councilmember Scherzer.
Yes.
Councilmember Millen.
No.
Councilmember Balls.
Yes.
Councilmember Ostash.
Yes.
Mayor Clock.
Yes.
Have 7 yes, 2 no. Motion is approved.
All right. Thank you, council members. I think we can move on to the next ordinance.
Yes, and that is an ordinance to add section 135.01, prohibition of chapter 135, prohibition of use or consumption of marijuana in public place, of title 13, general offenses.
Is there a motion to introduce?
I move to introduce that.
Bench will support.
Bench supported. Okay,
That,
any
that was
discussion?
Millen.
Yes, Millen and Bench. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Any discussion? Last time, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? It is carried, Madam Clerk. Next item.
Thank you. Our fourth and final ordinance tonight is to add section 91.36, smoking in parks regulations, of Title IX, general regulations.
Is there a motion to introduce? Oh, by the way, the last two will be laid over under the charter provision. Right. Okay, we got that. On this one, is there all in favor? No, I've got to
No,
get
we
back
need
to
a
you. We
motion.
need a second. We need a second.
I don't have a, no one motioned.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll move.
Bench moved. Is there a second? Is there a second on this?
More support.
More support. Any discussion on the fourth ordinance introduction? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? It also is carried, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We are now at miscellaneous business. We do have one item. We have a closed session for a strategy session connected with the negotiations of a collective bargaining agreement for MCL 15.268C.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move more.
Support, Millen.
All right, moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'm sorry.
Just a question. Have all the other users dropped off, or is Mr. Klopsick able to
He
take them
will.
off?
He will.
He does that.
All right. All in favor of the motion to go into closed session?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. All right, we are now in closed session. Okay. We are now we're now ready for a motion to come back to close the return to open session. Is there a second? I'm making that as a motion. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay.
Councilman Millen.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of returning to open session?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is carried. Okay. Now, I would move to approve the tentative agreement with the Patrol Officers Association of Michigan, the POAM, as discussed in closed session. Is there a motion to approve?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second. More.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, I just noticed Madam Clerk is frozen. We need to make sure that she is able to record the vote before we proceed.
Yeah, I'm fine. I can
All
hear
right.
you.
You're ready to go on?
Yes, thank you.
All right. then I would also move to approve the tentative agreement with the Command Officers Association of Michigan, COAM, as discussed in closed session and contingent upon ratification by COAM. Is there a second of my motion?
Support more.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries as well. Madam Clerk, we can proceed? Oh, no, we have a third. No, that's it. Okay, we can proceed. Is there any other business? Any other miscellaneous business to come before the council? If none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Mr.